Hi, everybody, and I hope you had a wonderful Friday. I hope you had a wonderful week, and hopefully a good weekend on the horizon. It's going to be a hot one for a lot of us. Coming to you from just outside of Nashville, Tennessee. And this story is one that honestly I had no intentions of covering because to me, if you don't really have anything to add, just shut up. You don't need to talk about every single thing. But there was a twist, there was a change in this story today that made me think, whoa, if this is now on the table, that's concerning and we need to talk about it. The topic that I'm talking about is the unfortunate killing of Rayshard Brooks in the Wendy's parking lot in Atlanta, Georgia. It set off protests, riots, unrest in Atlanta, in an area that really was already, there was a palpable tension, a tinderbox, if you will, ready to go off. Already protests happening in the city because of the murder of George Floyd. And it didn't take much to set the city aflame, essentially, both literally and figuratively. We have a not only a national movement, but a worldwide movement for equality and for justice. But the big difference between the killing of Mr. Brooks and the murder of George Floyd is the fact that a lot of police, the majority of police officers, feel that the killing of Rayshard Brooks was justified. He fought with officers. He took a weapon from an officer. Now, I know there's a lot of intangibles that had already been fired twice. There was, it couldn't have done any further damage to the police officer. I'm not going to debate those things. I am not articulate enough in the ways of a police officer to say anything about it. But what I do feel that I can talk about, because I worked in that realm for a number of years and still do, is former Officer Rolfe, who was let go from the department, who was fired, and is now up on charges including to the death penalty, charged with murder of Rayshard Brooks. And actually, we'll pause and listen to the DA of Atlanta for a minute talking about those charges.
These are the 11 charges against Officer Roth. The first charge is felony murder. This is the death that is as a result of a underlying felony, and in this case, the underlying felony is aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, and the possible sentences for a felony murder conviction would be life without parole, or the death penalty. Now, he's also charged in the arrest warrant with aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, and this is a count charging him for the shooting of Mr. Brooks, and the possible sentence for aggravated assault is 1 to 20 years.
And we know ultimately that Garrett Rolfe is going to have his day in court. There were some reverberations from the charges that were laid out against him. There were supposedly cop walkouts across Atlanta. There were areas where they simply quit answering the phones. Now, the Atlanta Police Department itself has downplayed this, has said there were a lot of call-outs on that particular weekend surrounding those charges, but that they still had the manpower to take care of the needs of the city. The mayor of Atlanta, and who many suspect will be the vice presidential candidate on the Joe Biden ticket, Keisha Lance Bottoms, has not even 100% acknowledged that there even was a walkout by Atlanta officers. So we know all this. And the point earlier that I alluded to that I had some expertise to talk about was this next part, this new addition to the story today. So Equity Prime Mortgage, which is based in Atlanta, Georgia, and is headed by CEO Eddie Perez, made the decision this week to terminate Melissa Rolfe, who just so happens to be the stepmother of former Officer Garrett Rolfe of the Atlanta Police Department. Now, the decision was made, they say, because of a hostile work environment that had been created by decisions that had been made by Melissa. They did not give a time frame. They put out a pretty interesting statement where, to me, having worked in the HR and training and development industry for a number of years, is going to make it very difficult moving on to another employer, where it mentions her losing the respect and the trust of her peers, her being unable to do her job because of the hostile work environment that was created. You would essentially expect to see some of these things in a confidential packet that was discussed in an exit interview. You would not expect this to go out necessarily in a tweet. So with 20 years experience in her field and being the HR senior manager at EPM, a lot of people from the outside looking in think that Melissa was fired because of association, obviously, with her stepson, Garrett. Now, reach for comment, the company said that was not the case at all, and that Melissa was actually getting ready to transition into a leave that the company had accepted, and that during this process, she had said things in the workplace that made most of the staff uncomfortable, and they, in fact, said it created a hostile work environment. Here's another piece of the puzzle, and in fact, may be the reason that Melissa Rolfe was terminated. Marjorie Taylor Greene, who is the candidate for Congress from Georgia, actually tweeted out this message that she said she received from Melissa. And within the message, the part that is getting people most upset is that she said the family is tired of this nonsense. Now, this was tweeted out Tuesday. We don't know when the message was received. She also later on Friday would tweet out this picture of her and Melissa, and she would ask for prayer for Melissa and family. So I don't know about y'all that are looking at this picture along with me, but I don't see a person who's just been terminated from her job. So that would lead me to believe that at this point, she had not been terminated from her job and was indeed getting ready to start a leave. And I feel like, based on the tweet coming out, the picture coming out, they buckled. I think the equity firm buckled, and they went ahead and just outright terminated her. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Now, her job, EPM, they're saying nothing of the kind. It was things that she said at work. They're not saying what they were. I tend to believe it was probably politics. And I think that before she started to take this leave, she had started saying things probably in the workplace in her frustration. And can you blame her? A major thing had happened to her family. And I would expect nothing less, clearly. I would expect probably more of the family of Rayshard Brooks. So I think initially, perhaps, they came to the conclusion that a leave was maybe the best thing for her. Then these tweets and everything comes out, and they make the decision to go ahead and fully axe her from the company. So my take is this. If this company got rid of their HR senior manager simply because of her association with her stepson, who is a police officer and in the line of being a police officer, got into a situation where he may face charges and may go to prison for the rest of his life, may lose his life. If they fired her for no other reason than that, they are wrong and they should be sued for it. Because if that is the case, we are going down a very dangerous path that could be the next step in this type of cancel culture. And I think it's dangerous already. The families of individuals who maybe go against whatever the current cause du jour is do run the risk of being contacted, being harassed, and now potentially, if you can lose your job for nothing other than being a family member, that's scary. Now, on the flip side, if she did, as they say, created a hostile work environment, potentially getting into arguments with people maybe about this situation, I think we've just got to know more. We've got to know more before we can really understand what is said. And I hope that nobody hears my words and thinks that I'm coming at this from a standpoint of racism or conservative versus liberal. I would want these same protections for everybody. Family members should be completely off limits. So this concerns me as it has some. And if we look at Twitter, already some people are speaking out about it. But again, I don't think we can speak out this strongly until we know additional facts. And if some more come out, I'll give you an update. But thanks everybody for listening. I hope you have a fantastic weekend.